Today we're going to talk about the barriers to having a difficult conversation. Let's start with a pop quiz, as the Americans would say. So here's the scenario. You're in a meeting, it's a really important meeting, all the regional department heads are there and your boss is running the show. You're there to support. You notice as she's about to begin to speak that she's got a big wad of spinach in between her teeth. And I'm not talking just a tiny bit, I'm talking a massive amount. It's very obvious, you know everyone's going to see it. So here's the quiz. Do you A, yell at her from across the room, "Mary, you've got some spinach in your teeth, love"? Or do you B, gesture wildly yet subtly and hope that she picks up the cues? Or do you C, get up, go over to her, whisper in her ear, "Mary, you've got something in your teeth, you might need to go to the bathroom"? Or do you D, put your head down and just hope the thing goes away on its own? Please go away on its own. So, before you answer that, here's what I've come to learn about having difficult conversations and the barriers that people have in having that difficult conversation. To me, there's two main things that stop people from having these conversations. One is their will or motivation to have it, and two is their skill, their ability to have the conversation. And that equals 4 different types of conversations. It results in 4 different types of conversations. So let's have a quick look at the model. I'm just going to skim through this model. Let's have a look. So on a scale of how skilled you might be in terms of the will, we've got skilled to unskilled, pretty easy. In the motivation aspect, or the will to have the conversation, we've got having it later, as in low will, you're putting it off as long as you can, or fairly high will, you're happy to have that conversation straight away. So skilled, unskilled, later or sooner. Now what that results in is 4 different types of conversations. Let's see where you might be. So if you're quite unskilled and you put the conversation off, you're likely to be sitting in the cringeworthy column right here. Cringeworthy conversations. By the time you have them, they're so cringeworthy, you're probably better off not having them. What if you are actually fairly skilled at having the conversation, but just so reluctant to have it that you put it off and you put it off and the whole thing becomes compounded and gets a little worse than it would have been if you had had it sooner? Or we move down here where you're quite unskilled at the conversation, but you're happy to have it. So that's probably the, "Oi Mary, you got spinach in your teeth, love." So you're happy to have it, but you probably haven't got quite the amount of tact that you might want to have these hard conversations. And finally, we've got the piece de resistance. This is actually the good box here. This is where we want to go. So you've got high skill and high will. You're happy to have it when the time is right, sooner than later, and you've got the skill to pull it off, which means the conversation is quite congruent. It's congruent with your values, it's congruent with a good intention, and it's very useful for the person you're having the conversation with. So the tips for this are, how do you move from whatever quadrant you're in to this one up the top here into the congruent box? Okay, so here's how you do it. If you have low will, so you're putting these things off, what you need to do, tip number 1, is change the meaning. For example, "Oh, I really don't want to have this conversation and she's going to be embarrassed." Wouldn't it be worse than her going to the bathroom and finding out that she had spinach and knowing you could see it and you didn't tell her, not even once? Wouldn't that be way worse? So if you change the meaning of the situation, it can help you get that motivation to have the conversation. What about the other spectrum? So here, if we're moving from unskilled to skilled, essentially what we really want to do here is practice. That's pretty simple. So find a structure, find something that works for you, and practice, practice, practice. If you need help practicing or getting the motivation, do give me a buzz, because I work on this stuff all the time with my clients. You are not alone, my friend. Good luck.